It feels like this opening, and it's like opening like parts of my heart or my spirit that like I'm not even fully aware of.
It's just such a satisfying feeling when you get in that space of making something and you're completely absorbed in it or taken over by it.
It feels great because it's that same sort of epiphany moment, like key turns the lock kind of moment, aha moment, where it all makes sense for a second.
When I do get into the creative inspired state, everything just kind of feels a little bit easier than it did when I forced myself to do these things. Like things come out easier and they come out better, and it's just a flow happens that doesn't normally happen.
I would be like in Africa or like in some other place and then forget that I was even working.
It just makes you feel whole in some way.
When I've been most inspired, it seems to me like I'm connected to myself, and then I feel this sense of connection to something other. Whether, again, you call it the sacred, whether you call it universe, whether you call it chi, like energy, whether you call it God, that there's some sort of connecting to something.
The creativity in my writing comes way more spontaneously. That's why I like mountain biking to write, because mountain biking is another one of those things where I have to focus, and it's focus or fall and skin your knees and like get a concussion, right? So you have to focus, and then you're focusing on biking, you're focusing on that next maneuver, and then all of a sudden from seemingly nowhere, you're like, oh, that's the next thing I have to do in my story. That moment in biking when I know what to do with my story, where the hell did that come from? Like, I don't even know if I want to know, you know? I just like knowing that it's there and that it's somewhere inside of me, and that doing the things that I like doing pushed it out.
I think when I'm just like not looking for inspiration is when I find it the most, when I'm just kind of like observing what's happening around me. Oh, like that. And I just see something and I'm like, that's so, like I need to remember that, I need to use that. And it's like totally random, whatever it is. I think once I start like thinking critically, I like don't have as much access to it, because then I'm like analyzing everything rather than just like blindly looking.
I just finished a song a few days ago. I was supposed to be studying for a test, and I was sitting in front of a piano studying for my music theory test, and I didn't really want to be doing that, and I was uncomfortable, and the room was hot, and it was shitty. And I decided to revisit something that I had written a while back that didn't have a definite form, and I tried to make it something usable. And so I sat there for hours.
Those moments of inspiration tend to come when you've been really working consistently. So I think the idea that it's either you sit down at your desk every day and write, or it's inspiration, you know, those aren't opposites. You really have to do, one sort of prepares the way for the other, in a sense.
Why people are inspired, I mean, that's like people have been, I think, wondering that for a long time.
So you have to be engaged in an activity that is challenging, that sort of takes you beyond what you can easily do, but isn't so challenging that you know you can't do it, you can't accomplish it.
This one actually had a few lines that I had been playing around with in different capacities forever. One that I had read, an article online that I liked a line from, one that I had heard from a bandmate in the bluegrass band that I really liked. One of them was "She Drank the Moon Last Night," and I still haven't nailed down exactly what that means.
Because I think true creativity a lot of the time comes from failure. I think you have to try something as hard as you fucking can, and then you have to be like, that sucked, that was awful, and then you try it, but there was something to it, you know, because you put your neck on the line. Like, you feel it if you fail, and if you don't fail, you're never gonna feel it.
I look at like a lot of random artists on Instagram who I have no idea who they are. They're completely decontextualized, and I just see like one photo and I'll like keep that and look at it again. So I don't know who the people are who influence my work, but definitely I find them on Instagram.
You know, inspiration Qigong would understand it as like movement of free flow of movement of energy, like energy without contraction.
Actually, where my thesis came from was I saw this picture of a woman like suspended from the ceiling in kind of like a laying position. I think it was actually like a wax model of a person, but I saw that and I was like, it looks like they're floating. I want to do that. Like, I want a person floating in space. How can I do that? And then that reminded me of like another idea I had earlier in the year that was like making some sort of like chair where all the parts of it were detached, but like specifically for each body part. And so then those two things kind of merged together and became my thesis.
I always start with lyrics. That's kind of unique to me. I come with lyrics and chords, and then a song gets made out of that. We jam on it. That gets boiled down. Eventually something that like is repeatable comes up, and then you remember that, repeat it, and a form kind of springs out of that.
Whatever you create is going to reflect the moment you live in, your personal past. I mean, it can't be separate from that. It's not like you can separate an individual or art from the culture that produces the person and produces the art.
Inspiration is sort of a universal ideal, but I think it manifests itself in different ways, probably depending on culture.
I think inspiration is a pure thing. I think it's very much person to person, and then that is informed by that person's preferences and that person's experiences. You have these tools that you've learned over the years through listening to music and playing music and learning about music and taking classes and all those things, and those are all informing your inspiration, but that inspiration is just kind of like a nebulous thing that happens to people, and then it's kind of cleaned up and informed by all of your experiences and tools that you have.
There is something that's not personal. It might be spiritual. I don't know what it is. And whatever form it takes in my poetry is certainly going to be shaped by the culture that I live in, because I'm shaped by the culture I live in, and I'm shaped by the poets that I love, and I have a certain set of aesthetics and, you know, certain habits as a writer that I've developed, or preferences that I've developed. So I think whatever that energy is, how it gets shaped is very much influenced by the culture.
A lot of times that energy wants to be in form, like it wants to have color and texture, or it wants to have space to like move however it wants in that room. There's that impulse, and then it's like, what do we do as human beings with that impulse?
There's a reason that I write poetry, or there's a reason that you make a film, because I think it does feed you in some way. It gives you something you need.
I honestly can say that after writing and being by myself, it had been the most powerful tool that I had used to help myself. And it was just like this huge release. And I get that in writing. I get that in writing in very specific moments, and it's rare, but when it happens, it's like, oh, you just get to take a breath. It's such a release. I love it.
I think right now people are really drawn to art and into like the act of making art, because it's like one of the things that only a human could do. Like anything can be done by a computer or a robot. Like they could make something, but they couldn't think of the idea. So I feel like that's something that's really powerful about art, is that it's like comes from a very human place. Like a robot couldn't do it, which is nice in this day and age.
That desire to create is a part of being a human being, and I think it can be deeply spiritual. I think it can connect us to the self that's beyond our construction of ourselves, our image of ourselves, and it can connect us against something so much larger